All right, so for this project, you are going to be watercoloring your typography design. A little bit of basics about watercolor. Most of you will probably have a set of pan watercolors like this. When you first open the pan, some of them come with a brush. You only probably want to use the brushes that are very soft. It's going to be very, very difficult to do this project if you have a very stiff bristled brush and get good craftsmanship. So make sure that you have a soft haired brush. I really like one where when you wet it, it creates a point, okay? You can also notice my setup as I'm starting. I have my color scheme that I'm going for right here. It can also be on your phone. I have a cup of water that's only filled about a third of the way up. I have a paper towel so I can dry things off if I need to, and I have my watercolor paper. Okay, right now I'm just going to teach you how to do some watercolor basics and color mixing, so that's why I don't have my project in front of me. All right, when I open my watercolor set, one of the first things I like to do is drip a little bit of water into each palette just to kind of start hydrating them. You also might notice that watercolor sets very rarely have white in them. And if they do have white in them, you don't want to use them, okay? How you make watercolors lighter is just by diluting the pigment and diluting the paint by adding more water, okay? So you can see that if I just touch this blue and paint with it, okay, nice medium tone. If I want to make it lighter, I'll dip my brush in the water, and then I can get a nice light blue to make my tint. If I want to make it even darker, I'll just rub my brush on the paint even more to activate the paint and pick up more pigment. Well, that didn't work as well as I wanted. Okay, there you go. So you can really get a lot of variety in watercolor and get different values based on the amount of water you use, okay? So for this project, you need to mix every color that you're using. So I suggest that you have your color scheme, and most watercolors have a lid that's actually a palette. So I suggest that you go ahead and pre-mix all of these colors, all right? None of these colors exactly match colors on my palette, which is good. That means I'm gonna mix them all, okay? So I'm just gonna start at the top. This is a tint of the color. So when I go and paint this, I'm actually gonna add a lot of water to the color to create that. So for my palette, I have to create a darker version of this color, okay? When I look at this color, it looks kind of close to a yellow for me, and it's a little bit pinkish. So I'm gonna start by grabbing a bunch of yellow paint, putting it on my palette. Okay, and I really, right now I'm trying to mix the paint for my whole project so I don't have to go back and remix too many times. All right. Once I am done with that, I'm gonna wash out my brush. Since I'm going to a new color, I see a little bit of red in there. So I'm gonna mix that together. I think I want a little more red, right? And now I have a color kind of like this. When I swatch it, which you can do in your sketchbook, it can be on plain paper, it doesn't have to be watercolor paper, okay? You can swatch it and check it against your color scheme. Well, I know I need to add more water because this is a lot darker than my color scheme, but I also want to make this a little more pink. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more red. That was a bit more red, but it'll be okay, I think. Okay. All right. Well, so it's kind of good when teachers mess up in their demos because you guys probably aren't going to do it perfect the first time. I added too much red, but I see that it's super close to this second color. So I'm going to add a touch more red to make it there. I'm also going to add a little bit of purple because there's purple in my color scheme and it looks a little bit purpley. I'm just adding a drop. Oh, that was a lot. Oh, well, look, I made that third color.
Perfect.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, well, that color's perfect, and I have my next color. So you see that a lot of this is trial and error, and it's really important to like swatch your colors in your sketchbook before you start. One thing that some of you guys have is you have more neutral colors than these colors that are found on the color wheel and in your palette. So let's say I have this blue that I want to create. It's a really deep, dark, greenish blue. Okay, so I'm going to start by getting a lot of blue and putting it on my palette. I'm getting more water. Okay, now to make it darker, some of you might immediately add black. Okay, but I don't really want to make it black because black can take over really fast. So I want to add the complement. Okay, so the complement of blue, I hope you guys are answering in your head, is orange. So I'm going to add just a little bit of orange, and it's going to neutralize this color a little bit and make it darker and more muted. Let me get a little bit more orange in there. Okay, so now that I've just have blue with a little bit of orange, and when I swatch it, this is my color. So you can see how different this blue is that has some orange in it to the blue that's straight from the pan. Okay, so if I were to take the blue and add a little black to it instead, okay, see how immediately that little bit of black turned my nice pretty blue black? So that's why we want to make sure that we're thinking about the complementary colors. So it might be helpful to have your mandala color wheel or your color notes out as you're working so that you can see what the complement is if you're trying to neutralize a color.